Yes, hello and welcome back to Edie Extra, live from the Collaboration Hub at the Edie 26 conference here at the Business Design Centre in central London. This is the place for us to be to learn about navigating some of the hottest topics and toughest challenges in sustainable business right now. We're bringing our long-standing podcast series to life here, live on site, recording several short and snappy panel discussions, looking at the horizon to discuss the next big trends that are taking shape in corporate climate action and are shaping corporate climate action. For this discussion, we are focusing on how companies can grasp previously overlooked sustainability opportunities from water to embodied carbon management. I'm Sarah, Edie's content editor, and for this discussion I'm delighted to be joined by Therese Noorlander, who is Sustainability Director for Industry at Grundfos, and Sophie Long, who is Sustainability Lead at Airedale by Modine. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. Could we get a quick round of introductions for you both? So it would be great to hear a little bit about who you are, what you and your companies do, and how you've recently maybe evolved your sustainability approaches within your respective businesses. So Therese, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. So my name is Therese and I look after sustainability in Grundfos, which is a solutions provider. So we support our customers with anything related to water and energy and help to optimize that in their processes. That directly leads us to really make an impact for our customers. So whether it's an end user, brewing beer or having a data center that needs to be cooled, we look after that and we really make sure that we make that impact. So what makes me tick as a sustainability person, but also us as a company, is to really support and come in with solutions that are scalable and really deliver. So no lofty ideas or any kind of concepts, but something that is really scalable and delivers. So delighted to be here.
Yeah, and I understand a big focus on water at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. We are a water solutions company and we help optimize that by connecting water, energy into the process. And yeah, water also makes me tick as a sustainability person. So personal passion.
Yeah, great. And Sophie, it'd be great to hear a little bit more about Airedale and about your priorities and what you've been up to over, I think, a year or so. You said you've been with the business?
Yep, so just been with the business for over a year now. So I am the sustainability lead for Airedale by Modine. So we are a HVAC manufacturer for data centers specifically. So we focus on providing all of the cooling equipment for data centers. So obviously there's a massive narrative around that at the moment in terms of cooling, in terms of AI, the different solutions that are available. So we are really just focused on trying to make our products as efficient as possible. And in regards to our sustainability strategy, we're trying to make it very holistic, covering all different aspects of environmental, social, governance, really embake that within our business itself. And yeah, that's about it really.
Great. And something that I saw looking at sort of both company sustainability related websites, etc., is something we've been seeing a lot since the start of the year in particular. So the linking of sustainability in an environmental sense with sustainability in a financial sense, and some quite strong evidence on how sustainability is becoming a competitive differentiator in the sectors in which you operate, which I'm sure people will be relieved to hear, especially in the world of data centres. So, yeah, what trends are you seeing and how is that taking shape?
So what we're seeing is that companies are starting to look more into operational risks, and water obviously connect to that. And so it means that sustainability is really moving, or has the opportunity to move on the agenda much more strategically, and that sustainability can deliver business resilience and help to lower risks, whether it's for direct operations into the entire value chain. And so that for me is interesting to see that sustainability is really evolving and moving beyond the environmental agenda.
Yeah, I think we're finding something quite similar in terms of our customers are really driving our sustainability credentials. So for us, we always have our customers coming and saying, okay, what can you do in terms of environmental compliance? What can you do in terms of product carbon footprinting? So really at that early sales stage, looking at tenders, looking at how we can stand out as a individual business when we've got lots of different competitors within the space that we work in. It's becoming a lot more important that we're actually being able to provide physical documented evidence of our sustainability credentials, and we're finding that it's not just environmental anymore. So it's really looking at that social side, looking at the social value side. So how do we interact with our communities around us? What volunteering do we do? And even internally within our own employee base as well, how are we supporting our employees on their social, health and well-being journeys as well?
And I'm sure we can come back to that, but I do want to come back to, it sounds like some of the conversations you're having are quite mature. A lot of decision makers now really understanding increasing risk and opportunity linked to being energy inefficient, to being high carbon, to not having a comprehensive water strategy. But we might have some people that are listening who either work at businesses that aren't that advanced or have clients that aren't pushing for that information. So what's your advice for effectively communicating this better to people that maybe aren't completely bought in just yet?
So my advice would be to look at where does water and energy connect to the business resilience. So where does it expose a company to risks, and where does it open up for opportunities to have better production outcome, to have lower risks on failure in the system, to have better managed connections with your suppliers. And so water really touches all of that. It's also very local, which makes it much more complex and more difficult to manage than maybe just traditionally energy in the climate topic. But I do think that is the journey to get yourselves on, and to, I wouldn't say disconnect water and energy from the environmental agenda, but use that as the first stepping stone, and then trying to translate it into the business operations, into the resilience, into the value chain, and then really start to think, how could I get my chief financial officer or my strategic colleague being interested in this topic? What's in it for them, helping manage energy and water, which then helps to elevate the topic and move beyond environmental topics and compliance.
Yeah, and I think building from that as well, it's about being able to communicate all of that information in a language that your executive board will understand. So whether that is doing or providing, maybe a cost-benefit analysis or looking at the financial aspect, what we're finding internally is that actually storytelling to our board is becoming a lot more effective. So we've presented kind of all of the facts, the statistics, the numbers, if you like, but what they're looking for is to see how this will feed into the wider picture and the wider strategy that we're presenting. So I think we've really got to balance that kind of storytelling aspect, manage the financials as well, so you're really covering all dimensions. But when you are communicating to the board, you want to have visuals, you want that level of engagement as well. So it's quite important to make sure that on the board you can maybe find your sustainability person there too, someone that you can relate with, that understands your ideas and can really help back you when you're presenting all of your sustainability case studies, all of your projects, all of your plans as well, so that you already have that little bit of buy-in, you're communicating their language, and hopefully from that you'll actually get more material, physical outcomes as well.
It's good to see that compared to a couple of years ago, more executive teams do seem to get this. But it's unfortunate looking at the reasons why, really, from what I've seen. A lot of people have said, it clicked for us when we had losses linked to extreme weather last year. Like, it clicked for us when the UN put out the report about water bankruptcy. It clicked for us when we knew we had to comply with CSRD or CSDDD. So, Therese, I'd love to know where businesses are at in this journey and what really is driving them, what has taken that understanding to the next level.
Yeah, so what we're seeing is that many businesses are on the journey, and it depends on who they are and also where they're based, and being pushed by maybe legislation, yes or no, how far they are. And what we're seeing when we specifically look at water is that water efficiency is on the agenda. However, the next steps to then move beyond water efficiency and to see water and energy being connected to business resilience, that's really a next step. And unfortunately, not a lot of businesses are there. Fortunately, then, that gives a massive opportunity and positive push, I think, to all of us working in sustainability to really see how we can help enable that and how we as sustainability professionals and practitioners can support and elevate this conversation within the business, because it needs that translation, it needs that help to move beyond compliance, to move beyond efficiency and looking into silos. So we've done energy and climate, we've done water, we've done maybe some other things, but how is it all connected? And as Sophie said, really translating that and making it very tangible, making it very practical, and easy for people to engage with. That's the next step. And definitely companies are on a journey, and yeah, Sophie says she's also definitely on a journey with Airedale Modine. It's just great to see how that's evolving and how we then also can support from our little piece in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the word holistic earlier, and that's been a sort of North Star of a word for you. So what have been your learnings on this? Because on the one hand, you've got to communicate things more simply. On the other hand, there's an increasing knowledge of how these topics all intermesh and overlap. So yeah, any learnings from that journey?
Yes, definitely. So we've really adopted a systems approach to sustainability. So not just looking at things in isolation and realizing that everything is interconnected. We work very much cross-functionally with different departments. So we have a look at how HR is affected by sustainability, how engineering is affected by sustainability, how finance is, and obviously you can from there really adopt pretty much an 80-20 approach to this. So do a materiality assessment on the basis of whether it's CSRD and whether you are a smaller business, you don't comply for those regulations, but you've been able to identify your hotspots as a business in terms of your focus sustainability areas, and then really narrow in on those, focus on those, build those up as your foundation areas. And obviously everything, like we said, is interconnected. Departments need to talk to each other. Marketing needs to speak to engineering about the manufacturing of a product. We need to talk about how some of our cooling equipment is more efficient and why that's beneficial. What are the sustainability benefits? So then you get engineering, sustainability, marketing all working together. So that's definitely something that we've really tried to do. So connecting people to sustainability and really empowering them to come forward within these focus areas that we have, just to adopt that holistic systems approach, making sure that everyone feels like they can relate to sustainability in some way, shape or form.
And with that need to talk to each other a bit more and to collaborate a bit more and to think about things a bit differently, I'm sure there need to be some new skills that go along with all of this as well. And Therese, I think something that you mentioned about water that's maybe different to traditional targets on carbon and waste is that you need that sort of deep local context-based knowledge. So what skills do businesses need to be building internally to develop and deliver like a future fit water strategy?
I think there's two different sets of skills that you need. One, there is a technical skill linked to water and really understanding what is the problem, what could be the solution. But I think maybe the more importantly, the skill that you need is to have this ecosystem thinking and ability to look and start looping in people. And earlier today, also in one of the great edie sessions, there was a lot of talk about sustainability people being change agents, and I strongly believe that. So it's a combination of being a change agent and a fantastic program manager to really manage all those different stakeholders, bring them together, help be the translator and create those bridges to talk about why is it important that you in HR or in marketing are also connected to this topic. What does it mean for you? How can this deliver? So if we're working on water, it's really about translating it and understanding where does it connect for you in finance? Where does it connect for you in operations? Where does it connect for you, et cetera, et cetera? And so I think a skill that is so critically important for sustainability people today is applying that translator function, connecting it to change management, helping to convince, helping people to engage with it, and connecting that through a sort of systematic approach.
And Sophie, something I know that's been keeping you busy over the past year has been basically answering those demands on embodied carbon, getting ready for things like product carbon footprints, life cycle analyses, whether that's due to regulation or customer demand. So what is the skill set and the process behind that?
Well, it's quite long, complicated, a little bit tedious. So with the product carbon footprints, it's an ongoing journey that I'm sure many other companies are quite familiar with. So for us, it really started in terms of looking at our internal data that we hold as a business, because without the physical data there, without understanding what our products are made out of or how much our products weigh themselves, you can't conduct a product carbon footprint. So that's really where we address things from the start. For us, we didn't really have any of those systems set up. We didn't know the material compositions or breakdowns, and some of the individual components that we deal with are very large components, a large compressor or a large evaporator or a large pump. So with that, we've had to actually really engage with our supply chain as well. So we've been kind of tackling this from two different areas, really trying to get our internal data capture system processes more robust, and then hone in on our supply chain sustainability strategy as well. And as part of that, engaging with our supply chain to make them understand, okay, why we need this information, number one, what information we need, and understand how it feeds into the bigger picture as well. So those are kind of the two main areas in order to get started with the product carbon footprints. Once you've got that raw data, you have a raw kind of baseline understanding as well of the different life cycle stages associated with a product. It's relatively easy to go ahead and pull that into a life cycle assessment themselves. When you're looking at more complicated LCAs, like an environmental product declaration where you have different product category rules, different program operators, that's where you definitely need a higher level of detail. But just really getting started on that journey, it's all about the data, understanding what your products are made of, making sure that that data is relatively accurate. And what I would say is that it's a journey in terms of the product carbon footprinting. I think sometimes as sustainability professionals, and I mean, I've heard this throughout the conference, everyone gets hung up on perfection, and we let that get in the way of progress. So what you really need to do is work with what you've got initially, and then understand, okay, maybe in 6 months' time, once we've reviewed these processes, we can update these life cycle assessments. And a key thing that I should mention is that it's important to be transparent about where you are, and being able to communicate that to your customers or to whichever areas are demanding those product carbon footprints as well, and just manage those expectations. And for us, we are not, because we're, kind of M&E equipment, we don't have the same history as, steel or concrete or any of these kind of other building materials themselves that have been quite established within this area for years. So for us, we're pretty much 5, almost 10 years behind on that journey, so it's evolving all the time.
And you mentioned there the importance of iteration and keeping this going, but we also talked a lot about getting the initial mindset, the initial strategy, etc. So to keep it going, what structures do businesses need internally to keep the momentum, keep the pressure?
Oh, that's a super good question. I think there needs to be a goal. So you need to have an ambition and goal connected to your values and understand why you want to do this, other than just because it's nice to do, or some people in sustainability care. So I think make it very concrete why this is relevant for the business. And I've worked in multiple businesses where there were different levels of commitment, both from top and bottom. From my experience, it does help if there's senior leadership commitment, and also if it's connected to the remuneration structure. The company I work for now, Grundfos, everybody in our division has a sustainability KPI, so basically their bonus depend on it, next to 4 other KPIs. It just works, and then people get motivated also to understand what is it that they can do to contribute and start to translate and help do that work for you. So I think, the structures it needs is there needs to be the business relevance and then the translation into what it means for the business. And then as far as you can go down into putting it into the behaviors and remuneration structures, the better it is and the easier it gets for our sustainability people.
Yeah, and I would say from my perspective, definitely you need that kind of executive leadership, the sponsorship, the buy-in, and you really need someone to be held accountable for, sustainability itself, because if it's not talked about within the boardrooms, at the QBRs, its actions are not going to materialise, so I think that's definitely key. What we also have, so we have our public commitments, which have really helped us in terms of spearheading that sustainability journey. So 2 years ago, we released our 2030 sustainability targets, and they're all environmentally based at the moment, so focusing on reductions in energy, in water, in carbon, and making sure we have a high recyclability rate as well within all of our sites, which is brilliant. So that also spearheads that buy-in at the executive level. So in terms of having that filtered down to the actual changing of practices at the operational level. So we do have green teams associated from all of our sites. So that's really focusing on our Scope 1, our Scope 2 emissions, looking at how we can decarbonise emissions, how we can be more energy efficient as well, how we can be more water efficient, which is great. So you really want that kind of higher up, bottom down approach as well. So having a little bit of a mixture, having a bit of a balance, and connecting all of those hubs as well that we spoke about earlier. So making sure you've got a hub in HR, you've got a hub in finance, you have your sustainability network that you can really pull on in order to get things moving.
Great, and I can just see people milling around and preparing for the end of the day here, so I guess that's my cue to ask a closing question. We've covered a lot of ground in this session, lots of learnings, lots of recommendations, but with everything that we've discussed on Mind, for people that are listening, what action would you give them to put on their immediate to-do list? What would be your one key call to action?
I would say start with data, and not to overcomplicate and dig yourselves into a rabbit hole, but use facts and start looking into what you already have, or how a supplier or somebody in your proximity can support you, because facts will help you to translate what this means for the business and get others involved, because you can connect it to operational value, better outputs with customers, etc., etc. So I would start with facts, translate it into what this means for the business in terms of either opportunity or a risk, that you then can start to plan and come with some concrete action. So also not too far away, but something that you then can start doing as of tomorrow, and it will mean something positive for the business.
Yep, so for me, kind of building on that, I would say really start with materiality. So try and identify if you don't have a sustainability strategy, or it's quite loose, or no one really knows what's going on. You've got 100 projects to do, you don't know where to start. Start with what is important to the business. So look at how the business operates, what's important to them, adopt the 80-20 approach, focus on those hotspots. So maybe looking at some low-hanging fruit that you can, do really quickly. You get an idea of the bigger projects that are going to have more of an impact but take more time as well. So those would just be good areas of focus to get people up and running.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for your time and your insights. Please do join me in thanking Therese and Sophie for their time.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sophie. It's lovely.
Thank you.
And a big thank you as well to Grundfos for sponsoring this session. So that is all the time we have on this particular Edie Extra discussion.